Okay, so now that we've gone through the basics of opening files and getting around layout, I'm actually going to start now with an empty layout. So I'm still in my project called Layout 1. I'm going to edit the layout, and it's telling me that there's no such thing as Layout 1 that exists, and I'm going to say, I'm going to create it. I'm unselecting creating it directly from a net list from the schematic. I'm just going to start from scratch, and I'm going to click OK. Let me bring Magic full screen. There we go. And again, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the grid to maybe about 1 micron. It's usually a good idea. I'm going to zoom out to actually see my full cell. And in this particular case, I'm not going to start from scratch. I have a subcell called INV1, an inverter, basic inverter, which I want to insert. So I'm going to set my cursor over here, left click in this area precisely. I'm going to do a little I to actually insert a cell. I'm going to bring INV1 in here and open it. So I just inserted INV1 in here. It's selected already. I'm going to hit the / to actually see what's inside, and you can see the wiring of that particular cell. Now I'm editing layout 1, which is convenient, and what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do a second copy of that cell, though it's not going to be exactly overlapping. I'm going to put it a little bit out, just space it out to show some wiring capability of Magic. So the cell right now is selected. It's INV1, lower left corner is over here, which is the point of origin of my cell, and I want to copy it exactly at this location. So when I hit C, the lower left corner of that cell is going to go precisely here, and there it is. I can use the arrows, left arrows, to move it by 1 micron, which is my grid. It's moving by grid units, basically left and right, using left and right arrow, up and down with the up and down arrows, so I can easily adjust. If I need to be finer in terms of accuracy, let me zoom in over here. So you can see precisely now the grid over here. I'm going to change the grid for that purpose. I'm going to go to maybe half a micron. If I change the grid, you can see now my moves are by half a micron. If I don't want to change the grid and just move precisely, I can control left shift, and it's going to move by minimum unit. In this case is 0.05 micron. That's the minimum grid unit that we have available. And I can move things very precisely this way. It saves you from having to change the grid back and forth all the time. So let's zoom out here for a second, and I'm actually going to wire these two inverters together without overlapping exactly like what we had in the previous example. So let me set my box over here, hit little Z to zoom precisely on the box. And the way I'm going to paint metal, there's a couple ways you can paint any kind of material in Magic. And the very first one is to actually draw a box over the area that you want to paint. So I want to paint essentially from this left corner over here to here. I'm going to connect the grounds together, and in order to paint this area, I have a couple ways of doing it. I can either use an existing material that's already shown, and I want to paint metal 1, which is very convenient. So I can middle click on an area that contains metal 1, and it will fill the entire box with that material. So let me show you. If I hit middle button at this over here, which contains only metal 1 right now, I'm going to paint this entire area with metal 1. If I want to erase it, I would just have to go and click over an empty area that has nothing. And if I click on it, I'm erasing the metal. Notice that things or metal that's already inside a subcell does not get erased because it's not at an edit level. A second way to actually paint metal 1 to this level is actually to go to my menu over here on the right side, and it says here I have metal 1. So I can pick my metal over here and hit middle button on this area, and I'm painting as well metal 1. That's a second way of doing that. Very convenient. So I'm going to do the same thing on the top. Notice that my ground and VDD are very similar. So I'm going to actually move the box over here and using the left button and reposition in my box and zoom on it. You can see right now that the box is not on the grid, so I'm going to have to do something about it. Easiest thing to do is to make the grid smaller, maybe 0.1 micron, which is indeed correct. Go right over this area, middle click on metal 1, and I'm painting again metal 1. So by virtue of painting metal 1, by the way, I'm actually connecting electrically these two areas, and if I hit S repetitively, you can see that I'm selecting the entire area. As a matter of fact, if I hit S on PMOS1 and expand it using the /, if I select now, you can see I'm actually selecting both wells, I'm selecting both rings, fully guarded devices, and the sources of both devices, which is exactly what I intended to do. Oops, sorry, go full view on this one. I'm going to select the NMOS, expand it as well, so now I actually have a full view of what I'm doing. Another way you can connect things together is by changing the tool that you're using. And you can go around, you can change tool by hitting the space bar. And so the first basic default tool is the box. The second one is the wiring mode. And in wire mode, notice my cursor now changed to an arrow, and I can select a piece of material. In this case, I just selected a piece of metal one. And as I drag it, you can see the area for moving forward as I move around. And I can either go up, or I can go left or right, or up and down. And you have to set, when you first start, to select which direction you want to go into. And I can go over the output of the previous inverter, and if I left click, it's actually going to fill this area with this. And you can see it still wants to keep going. If I want to, I can keep going. I can go up if I want to. If I don't want to, I can just undo using U. So the undo functions, by the way, are U, little u for undoing, and capital U for redo. When I'm done wiring, I right click and this now stops. So I've just put a piece of metal basically from the output of the first inverter to the second one. The wiring mode has some very useful feature. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let me zoom in. So it's Control Z, just zooms in the area. So if I go back and left click on the piece of metal and I start moving around, I can switch to the next layer up. So this is metal 1, I could switch to metal 2. Let's say I want to go over this cell to somewhere else. And to do this, I could shift left click into the area, and it's going to place a via. And now my new material is now metal 2, which I can go around and wire. Very easy. If you have multiple metal, if you shift left click again, you're going to go to the next layer. And in this case, I just shifted to metal 3. And my next metal right now is metal 3, which I can easily, obviously, go over my cell. That's not a problem. If I want to go back down, I can shift right click. And now I'm going back down. Oops, I'm not sure what happened here. Shift back to metal 2. And I can shift right click again to metal 1. So it's a very nice way to go up and down. When I'm done, I can just either escape or right click to just end this. If I hit S selectively on that first metal, I'm first going to select all the metal 1 and then everything connected to it. You can see there is connectivity. So the output of the first inverter is connected to the input of the second inverter. It's connected to all my metal 1 to via 1, to metal 2, to via 2, to metal 3, back to metal 2, back to metal 1. Very convenient. Perhaps of interest, and that's always useful if you take a look. The vias over here are not quite a via in the normal sense of what GDS layers are. The material that's right here in the center, is actually a combination of metal 1, this is a via 2. So this would be metal 3, metal 2, and the actual via opening that will normally be inset to some extent inside the via. If you were to make it bigger, you can actually make it bigger. I can just, let's make this via bigger. So I'm going to draw a box that's much bigger, significantly bigger, and middle click into it. And now my via is much bigger. Now, it will be made of a combination of via, most likely, inside, per design rule, but it's definitely bigger. Now, if you notice over here, I've actually just created a number of DRC errors. And if I put a box around it and hit Y, it's going to tell me that there should be some metal 2 overlap of via 2 by 0.05 micron. So let me fix that right away. I'm going to set my grid to 0.05, a little thinner, and I'm going around here. And I'm going to draw some metal 2 by putting a box right around it, and then middle click on the metal 2 area, or on the right side over here. And I've just put some metal 2 all the way around. If you're not sure what you're looking at, there's actually a good trick. You can just select the area that you have that's of interest and hit question mark. And in the feedback window over here, which actually you can resize if it's a little small, it's telling me that the tile that's underneath is a via 2 tile. So I know exactly what's over here. You can actually use that on any piece of layout that you have. I can actually select this area over here and say what's over here, question mark. And this is a combination of NWEL, PMOS, actually something called boundary that we use to make sure that transistors don't overlap inadvertently. One couple things important. Magic does not save automatically for you, so it's important to save whatever you're working on. I'm going to save this cell over here called layout 1. I'm going to write it, and that's the only one actually that I hadn't changed. If you're not sure, you can always save everything and quit, and it'll save everything and quit before you stop. The same idea, you can also save your cell under a different name. This one's called layout 1, but maybe this is not my real top level cell. I may want to do something else. So I'm going to save this particular cell as, I think there's 2 inverters. Oops, sorry, cancel. I'm going to save this cell as 2 inverters. There we go. It can be anything I want. It's not exactly terribly meaningful. You can see that the cell now just changed name. It's called 2 inverters, and it's combined of these 2 guys over here. Obviously, not something very useful, but meaningful certainly for the purpose of this this demo.